Hello and welcome everybody to True Remembrance. So, we're back in Black Iris's apartment. La, or what I guess is La, just appeared or arrived. And yeah, let's see what all this stuff is about. Why Analyi sent her here. I still don't believe the pedophilia thing. I think the sentence, am I the only one who was confused as hell when he read that sentence? The girl was out of the shower when I came back home. That was good. Except she had gone back to cowering in a corner. That wasn't so good. She was drying her hair at least. She jumped in surprise when she saw me enter, but she slowly relaxed when she realized who it was. Here, these are for you, I said as I handed over the bag of clothes. The sales clerk had gift wrapped it nicely, despite my protestations, and I'd been too nonplussed to really argue. Everything went quiet. So quiet, in fact, that I swore I could hear the girl blink. Then, timidly, she took the bag. She inspected it carefully, skimming her fingers across every surface. Apparently it was to her liking, because then she started opening it up. She carefully undid the ribbon and gingerly worried the tape off the wrapping paper. After neatly folding the wrapping paper and setting it aside, she reached into the bag and pulled out a white one-piece dress. There was something akin to the shock in her eyes when she looked up at me. I'm not sure it will fit on you, but please, go ahead. Her eyes flitted toward me, then back to the dress. When she turned to me again, there was a hesitant smile on her lips. Sure, it was only for a second, but it was the first real smile I had seen from her. Close enough for relief. At the same time, her obvious happiness over the clothes made me feel a little guilty that I'd spent so little time and effort picking it out. Oh, if you want to change, you should go in there. I pointed to the bathroom. The girl nodded happily, scooped up the dress and ran off. Interesting. I had never seen her so animated before. I sat back and opened up the book I'd been reading. Your hair is also shorter now. Also, I kinda like white better on you. I don't know. I hadn't gotten that far when I heard the sound of the bathroom door opening. Did it fit? Not too big or too small? All she did in response was to bow deeply. Her way of saying thank you, probably. I went back to reading. She, on the other hand, started to explore my apartment on her own. It didn't take her long. My place was pretty small. Eventually, she came back and sat at my feet. She was really quiet about it. So quiet that I didn't even notice her come back in. That, and I was too absorbed in the book back then. So the next time I looked up, I was surprised to find her staring up at me. She quickly averted her gaze when I stared back at her. Over the course of the next hour or so, this kept happening. The third time around, I finally let out a sigh and said to her, "You want to read something too?" She shrunk away from me for a second, but then she nodded almost imperceptibly. Well, all my books are on that shelf over there. You're welcome to read any one you want. She remained still for a minute or two, but curiosity finally got the better of her, and she walked over to where all my books were. She came running back seconds later, with my biggest book in her hands. I had to wonder whether she'd really get anything out of reading something like that, but I didn't say a word. She started flipping through the pages, an intense and earnest expression rippling through her face. She was obviously interested in the subject matter, and I was obviously interested in her mannerisms. Anyway, it would be rude to interrupt her, so I held my peace. The next time I looked up from my book, it was already dark out. How long had we been at this? This was as good a time to make dinner as any. After all, I was starved. She looked up from her book with a questioning expression on her face. Is that... This looks really familiar. The dress. I mean, the thing she is normally wearing is black, and her hair is white. And now what she's wearing is white and her hair is black. I guess from a design choice it just goes well together, you know. So it's kind of interesting. Oh, don't mind me. To which she nodded and returned to her book. I went into the kitchen. There was still some soup left over from lunch. I heated that up a bit, poured generous portions into 2 cups, and sliced up some bread. Then I put everything on a tray along with some spoons and carried it all into the living room. Go ahead and eat whenever you get hungry, okay? I put the tray down next to her. She turned to me and nodded. But she went straight back to her book after that. She was obviously too engrossed to be interested in anything else at the moment. And as for me, well, I was pleased that someone would find one of my books to be so fascinating, which was why I picked up my cup and went from reading my book to watching her full time. The moon was high in the night sky by now. My guest was obviously having a hard time keeping awake. Her eyes were drooping, and she started nodding off only to snap back awake every so often. And, this will probably sound horrible, but I found this kind of amusing. There we go. It wasn't long before she was sound asleep on the floor, curled up into a ball. Not that I blamed her. She had an action-packed day after all. She had been chased around town without knowing what was going on, and then she had ended up in care of a total stranger. She hadn't complained the entire time. I was proud of her. Yeah, I still think, like, the theory that she is the kid, or at least another Omega, is very likely. And for some reason, Analyi needs to protect her. I wonder why Black Iris needs to kill him, though. That we will find out, I guess. So I scooped her up, gently so she wouldn't wake, and tuckled her into my bed. Then I brought the book she had been reading and set that by the pillow. After that was all done, I sat back in my chair and waited. I didn't have to wait long. Soon enough, I heard the stamp of footsteps coming up the stairs. And then a loud knock on the door. I had been expecting this. I opened up, and, sure enough, Analyi was standing there. Oh, so that is how you look. Good evening. Tell me, seen a stray kitten lately? A cute one? He asked with one of those good-natured, dirty old man grins that I hated with a vengeance. So I glared before I let him in. What the hell do you think you're doing? I asked, pointing in the direction of the bed. But Analyi did not answer me. Instead, he kept staring at the sleeping girl, with tender warmth in his eyes. Now, I'm your guest, am I not? Have some tea for me, or something. Great. Didn't look like I had a choice in the matter, so I put some coffee on. I handed him a cup. He took it and started drinking greedily. Only after he'd finished his first cup and had a refill in his hands did he start talking. Was busy today. Couldn't go check up on her, so I had her come to your place. Trusted you wouldn't kick her out. You didn't. Good. However, never pegged you for a pedophile. Hands off. Clear? Clear. Okay. Whew. Now I'm relieved. So it really wasn't about that. God damn it, this sentence in the end of last episode really confused me. It really confused me. Analyi nodded. He seemed positively relieved for some reason. This your daughter or your granddaughter? No blood relation. Ow. Ow, I hit my thumb. I just look after her, because Auntie also, he's definitely the one that Lad thought about as her father. He just talks the same way. At your place? No, too much surveillance around my suit at HQ. The old church, the basement. She lives there. No one will find her that way. I looked over to our sleeping beauty with new respect. She had been living there, all alone. That was crazy. Reading. He discovered the book on the pillow when he drew near to the bed. He looked down at the title page for a minute and then said, Difficult, this book. Highly technical. More likely to give you a headache than any enjoyment. Better this than one of the books you wrote. Thank you very much. And she really was reading this. Looked like she was enjoying it a great deal, as a matter of fact. I retorted as I thought back to how she'd hardly touch her dinner because she was so engrossed in the book. Analyi shot me a ridiculously happy smile in response. Good. Been worried, see? She doesn't express interest in much. I read to her every night. Don't know whether she's listening or not. You read a book to her? No kidding. Ha! I'd never have guessed. Agreed. But she must have been listening. Otherwise she wouldn't been able to read this at all. Anali said as he ran his fingers gently through the sleeping girl's hair. But he rolled away a matter of seconds later, when she started to stir in bed. It wouldn't do to wake her after all. Then exactly who and what is she? There's something a little, no, really, off kilter about her, don't you think? I didn't really know whether that was an appropriate thing to ask, but damn it, after the trouble he'd put me through, I didn't care anymore. Very well. There's a certain place, a couple that lives there. This is their daughter. They kept her locked up, in a room, ever since she was little. Hold it. They loved her, in their own way, but they had no idea what to do with her, or something. So I took her. Parents are better off. She's better off. Win-win. Problem? No memory site protocol permit. Had to hide her. So that's the story. Okay, but that doesn't make the situation any less weird. I mean, you, out of the kindness of your heart, unbelievable. Ha! Harsh, but also true, he said with a laugh, but then his eyes narrowed. All trace of the kindly old man evaporated that instant, giving way to the cold, calculating alpha of omegas that I knew so well. Indeed, I'm not doing this out of charity. I'll have my use for her. Soon enough. You just imagined something wicked and evil, didn't you? No, not at all. I was too shocked to say anything more, so I concentrated on drinking my coffee instead. Anali, on the other hand, went back to pretending to be a kindly old man, except there was this twinkle in his eyes. Clearly he found toying with me to be fun. Why did you send her to me? Don't make me repeat myself. Thought I could trust you. Besides, didn't know if you were alive. Sent her to check up on that. 2 birds with 1 stone. See? I'm alive. Thank you very much. So I see. Congratulations. That was always the excuse he gave for his visits. To see if I was still alive. I had no idea what he was really going on in that brain of his. And I didn't care either. Best not to ask questions. Oh, give me a sec, I need to drink something. Sorry for the interruption. Man, I'm recording like over 2 hours now. No, actually close to 2 hours now. And I hadn't had a drink since then. And my voice starts getting really like raspy. At least it feels like it. Probably doesn't sound... Always when I say my voice sounds raspy or something like that, it sounds actually pretty normal. Man. I wonder what he plans with her though. I mean, as mentioned, she probably has some special powers. But what does her Black Iris have to do with all that? At least it seems it was really something wicked. Because otherwise, Black Iris wouldn't have shot him. On the other hand, La has white hair. Maybe they fuse or something like that? Like he puts some of his mind into her or something like that, something weird like that? Man, I don't know. At that point, there is nothing that couldn't happen, I guess. Shouldn't you get awfully tired of checking up on me at some point? I asked with full sarcasm. But Analia just shot me the strange and almost sad look. Not at all. Had a pupil like you once. Stubborn as a mule. Liked him. He didn't like me one bit though. So, was he asking me to like him? The student's place? No way I was going to do that. Because his harmless old man act was just that. An act. In actuality, this guy was as dangerous as a pit of vipers. And then some. You wouldn't want to turn your back to him in the broad daylight, let alone in a dark alley. Besides, I could never get bored of watching you. You say you don't care about anything, but that's not quite true. Deep inside, you still think you can change things. You haven't thrown away hope away, yet. Absolutely fascinating. I glared daggers at him. He didn't look impressed. And sure enough, I hadn't managed to shut him up. Memory side killed you, and it brought you back, in the middle of shit. Memory side killed you, then it brought you back, in the middle. Okay, whatever that means. I don't recall asking for psychoanalysis, thank you very much. Oh, my apologies. Bad habit of mine. I sighed. He didn't have to tell me. I already knew. Since he kept on apologizing profusely, I eventually waved him off. Alright, I understand. Your secret is safe. I won't say a word. So, what will you do now? Wake her up and take her home? Let's see. Need to be at my place by dawn. Otherwise they will get suspicious. Oh well, let's wake her. Analia called out to her. Hey, wake up. But the interesting thing was, there was one thing he wasn't saying. Her name. What's her name anyway? Doesn't have one. Didn't give her one. She's my project, not my daughter. Doesn't need a name. He replied with a vague smile. But the thing was, there was something so tender about the way he was looking at her. So he's bullshitting Black Iris, obviously. I mean, at this point this was already clear. I just wonder why. The girl opened her eyes and smiled at Analgi with obvious relief. Then she got out of bed and scampered after him. He was already heading out to the door. Thanks for everything. I'll bring you something. Next time. Sure. The girl shot me a look before walking down the stairs and out of sight. I smiled back, because for a moment she seemed desperately lonely, and said, Feel free to come back and read my books whenever you like. Her eyes opened wide in surprise. Then she blushed. I managed a happy smile before turning to leave. No still flashback. Okay. That is so much flashback right now. God damn. It's like an episode of Naruto. Naruto! Naruto. 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 Or as I would say in German, Naruto. In German it sounds the dumbest. Naruto. Naruto. Like, the German R is a weird thing, you know? Like most people, I don't know if I ever mentioned that in a Let's Play, but most people think like the German R is something like, you know? And that's actually not true. That's only like the South German R. Like they do that in Bavaria and also in Austria, you know? So, yeah, this is actually not how a normal German says it. Like the R is like only not really like rolling like, but it's just like one roll, like, you know, you know what I'm saying? Like Naruto, 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 Naruto. It's difficult to explain. If I had to learn German, I would never master incorrect incorrect R. Definitely not. Our nameless girl started dropping by to see me pretty regularly after that. She'd always come in the evening. It was probably too risky for her to be wandering about in the daytime. No wonder. If I were her, I'd want to avoid being pursued by those black-suited goons as well. The pattern was always the same. She'd immediately go to the books upon arrival. After a few hours of reading, she'd stand up and go back home. I had always offered to walk her back, but she had never accepted. It wasn't that she was ever a bother, far from it. But still, wasn't it a bit suspicious for a girl to come visit a man's room, always late at night? So I kind of wanted to say something to her, but I never had the heart to bring it up. Besides, I didn't want to give her the permission that she wasn't welcome here. The impression, the permission. She came last night, as punctual as the clockwork that was missing in town. As usual, she picked out a book. As usual, she started reading it with gusto. Except this time around, she fell into a sleep so deep that I simply declined to wake her up. Which was why, in the morning now, her eyes fluttered open, and she jumped out of bed in shock. I'm so sorry, she said with a worried look on her face. She had started talking to me as of late. Short sentences and single words. But that was still progress. I suppose I shouldn't have been surprised, but she spoke just like Anali. Hopefully she wouldn't start imitating his personality as well. Oops, I stole your bat. Oh, don't worry about it. Did you sleep well? Yeah. I see. Anali, you cheapskate. Couldn't you at least buy her a better bat? I looked out the window. The sun was just starting to peak in front of the horizon. It would be dawn soon. Well, want some breakfast before you go? Don't want to be a bother. No, wait, how did I... Last voice is kind of not correct. Don't want to be a bother... Huh. Oh well, I'll do my best to do her as usual. Well, I suppose I should have been relieved. I mean, I know, with Black Iris I'm changing voices all the time. That is because I have a tough time with males, like... I always do like a bit deeper voice with a bit like this, you know, I always do a bit like this with Black Iris. You know, always like this. And when I normally talk, I talk like this. And when I talk like this, eventually I will go back into my normal tone, one way or the other. I have a tough time keeping that consistent. Although this too was a problem because she went too far in the other direction. But see, I've already made breakfast for two. I'll be even more bothered if you don't eat up. She nodded happily. So after an early breakfast, we went back to reading our books. But by the time lunch came around, she'd started wandering my apartment in boredom. I had lots of books, so this came as a total shock. She had read them all, cover to cover. So she pulled a random book off the shelf and started reading it over. The problem was, it was one she had read not too long ago. Obviously, she still remembered most of it. Nothing interesting about that. I watched her for a short time, and then I asked, "Want to go buy some new books?" She had a completely thunderstruck expression on her face at first. Obviously, she hadn't grasped what I just said. But soon enough, that gave way to a great deal of happiness, and a great deal of confusion. A way of saying that she really wanted to go, but it was too dangerous, I suppose. Oh, don't worry about it. If they are around, all we have to do is lose them. It's elementary, I said with a smile, but she was still rooted in place. So I took her hand and pulled her up to the feet. She didn't offer any resistance, because if I didn't do this, she'd never venture outside again. Okay, I just did a mistake, I think. Yep. Ah, fuck! No! No, I stopped recording and I skipped some shit. Wait a minute, I think I skipped like... She followed me out the door with a newly resolute expression in her eyes and a new boldness in her steps, and so we stepped into a town filled with rain and tears. That rain fell upon this city was cold and clear. There we go. Okay, now we can go on. And when it came time for winter, the rain turned to snow. I only had one umbrella in my apartment, so we walked together, slowly. I surveyed the area. No suspicious people or black suits in the area. We walked along the road to 6th Street. I didn't want to draw any untoward attention, and taking the trolley would have done just that. My companion looked all around her, with breathtaking interest. Everything was new to her. That wasn't so unusual. She'd probably only ever seen our city under the cover of night. According to Anali, the first time she had ever stepped outside was when she had come to me for the first time. And she had been chased the entire way, so I didn't really think that counted. Every few seconds I had to call out to her, to keep her from slipping on a puddle or crashing into a wall. And she'd always look up at me with a bashful smile on her face. We walked to 6th Street in relative silence and entered the bookstore. She looked about in wonder at all the books that were lining the shelves. I was afraid she'd get lost for hours inside this place, but she quickly chose a book for herself and came back. I had the cashier ring up the purchase, and I handed the book to my companion, who hugged it to her chest with a look of such bliss that I almost felt guilty. "Thank you," she whispered with a smile. It was the same expression of warmth and relief that she put on whenever she saw Anali. We wandered around the storefronts after that. and I became aware of the presence of a black suit in the crowd. So I grabbed my companion's hand and ducked into a nearby store. She was taken completely by surprise, but she followed me in regardless. We hid there for a while. We could see the black suit circulating through the area, so our tensions were high. It was the same guy from before, but it didn't look like he'd noticed us. It was more that he was tracing the trail that my companion had taken to get to me in the first place. I watched him systematically stop by every store along the way and talk to the shopkeeper. He was probably inquiring about my companion here. Man, I'm really inconsistent with Black Iris's voice. He was probably inquiring about my companion here, and he was coming this way, which meant he'd be at the store soon. I took a deep breath, took my companion's hand, and walked out of this place. I opened up my umbrella, held the girl close to me, and walked right past the black suit. We walked in silence like that for a time. I turned to look and saw that the black suit had disappeared. So he hadn't discovered us. Thank God for that. Just then, she started struggling a little. She was probably uncomfortable in my grasp. Oh, sorry about that. I let go. She stepped back and silently averted her eyes. She was blushing furiously too. I hadn't intended to hold her so tightly, but that was what ended up happening, obviously. And for the entire trip back to 5th Street, she refused to as much as look at me once. We were nearing my apartment complex when she suddenly burst out laughing.
Wow, scary. Couldn't breathe. Glad that is over,
she said with a sigh of relief. That is understandable.
Don't you get scared too? Sometimes, Black Iris?
She asked, her eyes wide open. And I realized this was the first time she'd ever called me by my name. Sure I do. There's not much I'm not scared of. She kept on laughing gently. Obviously, she thought I was joking. She started reading the book the moment we got into my apartment. Well, to be more accurate, she made a good effort, but she was asleep within minutes. Probably tired out from all that walking. But man, did she sleep a lot. Anali came by the evening. He brought some pasta and vegetables in a bag with him. He obviously wanted me to make dinner for him.
She wasn't at the church, so I thought she might be here,
he said as he came to the bedside and stroked the sleeping girl's cheek. I got out of my chair, took Anali's bag and went into the kitchen. Anali got into my chair and stayed put. I'd started washing the vegetables for a salad when Anali started talking to me.
She has started talking. A lot, hasn't she?
Sure. Not a lot, though. Just a few words here and there.
She's never uttered a word, not in all the time I've known her. But she wants to talk. To you. That's why.
I turned to stare at him when he said this. His eyes met mine, narrowed, gleaming with a vicious light, and awfully amused. Obviously he had been waiting for this. So I turned back to the salad.
It's the truth. Not a single word to me. Wasn't necessary. But now she talks, and is interested. In all sorts of things.
I plated the salad and pasta and carried everything to the table. As I approached the bed in order to wake our sleeping beauty, Analia casually remarked,
I wonder, if you like her, you can keep her, if you promise to treat her well.
Are you serious? But his face was its usual harmless old man mask. Impossible to tell whether he was joking or not. I glared daggers at him. Maybe I was starting to get mad. Maybe I wasn't. I didn't really know, but I had to say something. Unlike you, I don't keep people as pets. If you really want to treat her well.
I don't. I don't love her.
Really? And why are you running your fingers through her hair like that? And why that loving look in your eyes?
I don't love her at all,
he repeated softly. Except to me, he sounded as if he were trying to convince himself of it more than anyone else. I had no idea what was going on in that mind of his. Neither the girl nor Anali came by my apartment any more after that. And as for myself, I became so busy with my own work that I didn't really think much about them. But there came a point when I found myself between assignments, and I began to wonder what had happened to the unlikely pair. I'd been planning on heading out of town anyhow, so I decided I'd drop by the church. Maybe I'd find the girl there. And that is the perfect cliffhanger for next episode, because this is already, again, very, very long. I don't actually want to make these things 30 minutes long, but I somehow always end up close or even over it. Man. But since he shot Anali in the church, it seems like shit is going to go down next episode. So, thank you everybody for watching. Come back for the next episode. And I'll see you then. Bye bye.